And a very good morning to you. We found this in the office. It's David O'Leary, Leeds United on trial. And it's pretty good. There's lots of little nuggets, including on the back dust sheet. David O'Leary is arguably the most charismatic football manager in Britain today. I opened it on a page there and he was giving out about Gilesy. I'm like, well, I wonder how well this stacks up. From June 2002 is when he wrote the book. Take Johnny Giles, for example, full stop. He was a terrific player, comma, but he was renowned for going over the top in tackles. I didn't want that from my team. I wanted players as great as Reeves, but I wanted us to be known as a competitive side that played thrilling football.
How did that work out?
Two of his team chased a young man down the street and were involved in an affray. One of his players ended up being prosecuted for it. Doesn't want them to be rough on the pitch, though.
Once you play nice football on the pitch, that's how you should be judged. If you show your studs, then you're showing your studs as a man, really, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, what happens on the pitch, stay on the pitch. Anyway, England are out of the World Cup. Good morning to you. Welcome along to Thursday morning's OTB AM. The World Cup is hurtling towards its conclusion. There's one match that matters left. There's obviously two matches. Another meaningless game between Belgium and England, which I'm definitely not going to watch. So I don't know if justice was done. I think that, like, both of these teams, if England had scored again, everybody would go, oh, England deserved to go through, because that's the post-fact rationalisation that we see in football analysis. It was a fairly even game in the end.
Yeah, well, if England had scored again, then the second half might have played out in similar circumstances where Croatia were on top. That tends to happen though, when a team has a lead. If England hadn't scored so early, did they score too early? Is the question I'm trying to get around to here.
Oh, yes, it's perfect. We can torment them with questions that we torment ourselves with.
Yeah, exactly. It works out so nicely. And it was at that moment when Kieran Trippier's free kick beautifully hit the back of the net and Subasic just, his arms didn't work, which is sometimes a problem for a goalkeeper. It was at that moment that I started to think, maybe I don't want England to win this.
He was injured, right? From the previous game.
Yeah, but
why didn't they try him with a few long-range shots, like, as the game progressed?
Or maybe if Subasic woke up that morning and he was like walking around like this and he's like, I can't lift my arms above my head, maybe the Croatian management could be like, that's a problem. But clearly they didn't think that. They were like, Christian Subasic, who's just like this for the entire morning, is going to be fine. And it almost bit them in the ass at the end. So it didn't. Is the short story here. And it didn't in such an ironic way that Croatia outran England at the end. It did help when your strengths lie in the middle of the pitch. It does help when...
I mean, I did say that on yesterday's show. I heard you say I told you so, but I told you so.
Yeah, well, you did. You told everybody. So fair play to you.
No need to be such a wanker on.
Congratulations, you're the big winner, not Croatia.
I realise it's tough. I know you're going to count against your natural inclination there, but anyway.
Well, I said it was going to be a Croatia-France final before the semi-finals began, so I'll take that one.
We have a busy show for you today.
We do.
Lots of good stuff.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what's coming up now, and sure, then we'll do the papers, because there's lots of stuff. Tommy Walsh is going to help us preview the All-Ireland Hurling quarter-finals. Two big games this weekend, which are largely being overshadowed by the Super 8, which is kind of what hurling people feared when the Super 8 was announced. But luckily, they fixed that situation by giving us the greatest Munster Hurling Championship of all time. Although Cork won, so given that Cork always tend to win, maybe you needed an upset if it was going to be the greatest. But anyway, it was the greatest for now. John Duggan is in Moscow. He's going to be there for the rest of the tournament, which, as I said, is only one more meaningful game. He was at the game last night. He's seen some scenes on the streets of Moscow overnight, and we'll talk to him about that. Risteard's Russia, the second last one of these as well. This thing is just hurtling towards its inevitable conclusion of a France victory. And Harry Redknapp, Owen was speaking with Harry Redknapp yesterday. It was an interesting experience.
Yeah, it was a very interesting experience.
He had to edit the video because he made a phone call during the middle of it.
He did, just a phone call to a mate. He just needed to clarify some details about a question I was asking. But fair play to him, like doing the journalism that I should have done.
Yeah.
He was like, he tells a story about a guy, an Irish guy, a fella from the north no less, who he bought a horse off, and he needed to just get a little bit more detail, and he was expecting me, the Irish man in the room, to actually have the detail, and I didn't. I looked fairly red-faced.
Blank.
And Harry was like, all right, I'll do the journalism for you. He didn't say that, but that's what he should have said. He should have rubbed my face in it, and he's like, you think you're a journo? You think you're a good reporter? Well, I'm going to actually do your work for you. And he got the details for me, the details that I should have had. But yeah, an interesting character. He's so giving with his time. I mean, it was one of those media events where it was kind of like a Hollywood movie where it's like interview after interview after interview for hours and hours and hours.
Press junket, yeah.
And I was one of the later ones in there, and he was cheery and happy, and happy to see me.
There you go. He's just a happy chappy. Right, time for the newspapers.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie. Championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
Okay, so I do have an Irish Independent newspaper here for you. The back page of the Irish Independent is Super Mario crushes England's dream. Mario Mandzukic celebrates after scoring Croatia's extra-time winner in his team's 2-1 victory over England last night. Mandzukic, who was obviously injured really badly when Jordan Pickford nearly killed him, did like a full run to the crowd, slide on both knees. I'm like, well, you want to just be careful. You have a World Cup final to prepare for. Unless you're not actually injured, Jordan Pickford just kicked you and you're fine, which is also a possibility. Super 8's format will throw up some surprises, Miko. So Miko Dwyer has said, I don't know how anyone can be so sure of these things. There are very good teams in both groups, and Dublin and Kerry have to get through these first before they're even in the semi-finals. So obviously everybody in Kerry is just going, sure. I mean, it's a Kerry-Dublin final. It's nailed on.
Well,
I mean, you are.
We aren't really. There is there's no suggestion of that having ever occurred. Once Monaghan got through the qualifiers, that was a game changer immediately, because it puts pressure on them against Galway this weekend.
Who?
As soon as Monaghan came through, it puts pressure on Kerry to beat Galway this weekend, because if they don't, then suddenly their season is on the line in Clonus. It is.
Okay. I was like, what? Okay, yeah, all right. Yada.
But it is, that's a fact.
I mean, obviously it's a fact, but obviously they're going to beat Galway this weekend because they're Kerry and they always win.
Well,
you're super confident. That's the. You're so confident you can't even bring yourselves to Yarra properly. It's like this weird kind of shit. We're so good. We're so bloody good. We're going to win this thing handy. Just need to dampen that down a bit, but I can't because we're going to win it handy.
I love the way it's been Miko that's been trotted out. It's like we can't settle for one of the O'Shea's here. We need to go for the GOAT. We need to wheel him out with the Yarras, because we need to Yarra hard this week. And Yarra hard he did.
And even he can't help himself. The likes of 1975 doesn't happen very often. Of course, 1975 was the last time that they had so many debutants. 1975 was the birth of the greatest team of all time. Mm-hmm. So this is the birth of the second greatest team of all time. Well, it's or the second greatest team of all time.
As you were saying earlier in the week, it's good news from a Kerry perspective that England lost last night, because we were fearful of a repeat of 1966. Of course, that great Galway team. Is this the rekindling of another great Galway team? It could well be.
So the Irish Times this morning, Croatia showed the greater courage after England's plan falls apart. That's the match report from Ken Early in Moscow. The silence came before the dawning. Football is not coming home. So Johnny Waterson was sent to London to see what the streets of London were like.
He's covering Wimbledon.
He's covering Wimbledon, fair enough. Sent out onto the streets of London from Wimbledon. And this is a helpful story, an illustration here. The headline is, FIFA warns TV to cut out cutaways of hot female fans. And this is the Irish Times sports section today. And the illustration of the story, which is about the sexism that the FIFA cameras have been picking out specific female fans. The illustration of that, which is here, is actually bigger than the number of words they use to tell the story. A picture tells 1,000 words. In this case, a picture tells like more than, I don't know, is that 300 words there? But the Irish Times sports section today, to illustrate the story about the sexist FIFA cameras, what have they done? Well, maybe you can take a look at the pictures and decide for yourself. So if that's not missing the point, then I don't know what is. It's pretty obvious stuff. If the Sun did it, they'd be like, oh, look at this, they're just using this as an example to do this thing. It's like, fair enough, the Irish Times are above all that shit, aren't they? Super Mario World, Mandzukic fires Croatia to final and sends 3 Lions home. Is Super Mario World, I mean, Super Mario.
But Super Mario World is a video game.
Yeah. Super Mario is the superstar of Super Mario World.
Yeah, but you know, it's all Super Mario's world and he's living in it. Jerry, you know,
I get it, but Federer bows out. This is so Roger Federer went out in an all-time classic. 13-11 was that the final score?
Yesterday was by all accounts one of the greatest days of Wimbledon, and it just so happened to clash with England. So nobody in the UK really was didn't care too much about it, but they were like, actually, I'm not going to throw on ITV. I'm not going to throw on RTE if you're living in Ireland. I'm actually going to watch the rest of Nadal against Del Potro. Of course, it spilled over. Into the actual game.
Did it? Yeah, late.
And Anderson versus Federer was earlier in the day. So it was a fantastic day, but it's going to be forgotten about because of the fact that there was a World Cup semi-final that actually occurred on the same day. Kevin Anderson, big Kevin Anderson. I don't think anybody can actually refer to him without preceding his name with the term big. He is.
He looks like more than 7 foot, but he's only 6'6" or something, is he?
It's something like that. So yeah, the end of Federer was going to be. We were on for the dream finale, of course. Federer and Nadal on opposite sides of the draw. 10 years on from the greatest game of all time. So it was all set up perfectly for that. And Kevin Anderson only went on and ruined it all for all of us.
They're coming home is the headline on the Irish edition of the Times. That's Kieran Trippier being helped off after he went down injured with about 10 minutes left to go, and so they were down to 10 men for the final, maybe about 8 minutes ultimately though with the additional time. Will Cluxton make it? Goalkeeper faces race to be fit for Dublin's first Super 8. Cluxton's not playing, then the Super 8 suddenly gets very interesting, I think. Like, no Cluxton, no Connolly, no Brogan. The bench isn't as strong then when you don't have that second tier of players coming on, so I don't know.
That's the point. I think even with even with Cluxton fit, that doesn't really kind of play into the whole depth situation. I think it's quite clear to everybody to see that Dublin don't have the depth that they had 2-3 years ago at this point. Not even even in terms of last year, they probably don't have the depth. So it is a worry for them because you're going to need a panel. The thing is, just because their squad isn't as strong as the Dublin of 2016 doesn't mean that it's not the best squad in Ireland. It is still the best squad in Ireland.
Apart from Kerry's, obviously.
Well, no, it is clearly, Dublin are clearly number one. It's absolute nonsense to suggest that Kerry beating Dublin wouldn't be an upset in this year's All-Irelands.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be like a 2-point spread by the time they reach the finals after Kerry slalom their way through, scoring 4-20 this weekend against Galway, 5-15 against Monaghan, and then resting players against Kildare and only racking up 3-23 in Killarney, at which point they'll be through to an All-Ireland semi-final against Donegal.
I can't wait to see what Tyrone do to Dublin and Oma then, because Tyrone, of course, beat Cork. I just said the word beat Cork by the same amount that Kerry beat them by, but in a non-neutral venue or in a non-Cork venue, you know. So
Kieran Trippier was 55-1 yesterday to score. One of the Racing Post's tipsters tipped him as first goal scorer, and also John Stones at 33-1. So you're a quid in if you managed to pick that bet up. But then you'd also have to bet on every single tip that they have. So, you know, the day after they highlight what they tipped when they've tipped 20 things, one of the bets has to come through.
Surely, it surely does. It's Super Mario as well on the back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning. Mandzukic strikes an extra time to end England's World Cup dream. And Tompkins says unfit Cork, just not good enough. Here's Philip Lanigan's story. Larry Tompkins has delivered a scathing assessment of the Cork senior football team, saying they're not fit enough and they're not good enough, which is a heavy take on that. There's going to be more. It's going to be a long winter of discontent, you'd imagine, down in Cork as they try and figure things out in the football front. On the back page of the Herald, it is Super Mario World as well. Croatia striker shows England exit, and you've also got Maestro Modric made the difference. That's John Giles's column. The back page of the Irish Daily Star then this morning is Man of God. Heartbroken England are out as Croatia beat England 2-1
That's
in
good.
extra time. Yeah, it's pretty good. Like if he had actually handballed it would have been even better.
He did have a handball in the game.
He did
at one
actually.
stage,
Good point.
They could have got that picture up and then...
Like, we're all going to forget about Jordan Pickford's amazing save. Like,
Which save?
the one with Mandzukic, the one which kind of collides off his knee. That's when he gets injured, right? When Mandzukic gets injured.
I mean, it should have been a penalty. He killed him.
But he saved the ball. Like, what's he supposed to do? He rushed out. Mandzukic connected with the ball.
He got very lucky.
Collided off Pickford.
Yeah, whether he's got studs up, follows through, is trying to kill him. There's clear intent. It's like, very lucky there. They didn't VAR that.
It's like, separate to that, it's an amazing save. Just because he happens to almost destroy a human being doesn't mean it can't be an amazing save. These things can both exist.
Like Ronan Shanahan's tackle.
Let's not go there. The back page of the Mirror is kicked in the Balkans.
Hey, also good.
Southgate's Brave Lions suffer an agonising Moscow semi-final defeat.
Did they have the picture of Kyle Walker and his Balkans?
They don't. Maybe inside they do.
Sorry, I'm not looking for a picture of Kyle Walker's Balkans. It was just to illustrate
wondering,
the headline.
I was just wondering if you did. I was going to try and seek it out. Southgate's Brave Lions suffer an agonising Moscow semi-final defeat to the wily old creations in extra time, but the proud coach says, I can't ask any more of my players. The back page of the Irish Sunday this morning is They're Coming Home. England KO'd, Roy sticks boot in. That's Roy Keane there, really going heavy on England last night on ITV. And Ed Miliband hitting back, which is the Twitter spat of the year, really, in my opinion. Let's move on to some of the UK papers. Let's show you the back page of the UK Star.
Ed Miliband.
Crow no. Extra time agony as Brave Lions crash out. We'll move on to the Mirror, the UK Mirror that is. National Treasures. This is the same sub-headline as the Irish one, but a different big block capitals headline. The UK Daily Mail then is "We salute you. You've made us smile, made us proud, made us believe. Every one of you a hero. No trophy this time, but it feels like the start of something every Englishman could get used to." Not Englishwoman, but anyway. It was torture last night. It's shattering this morning, but Gareth Southgate, we salute you. It's almost like a kind of a 1939 headline there. It's like everybody get your call to arms sort of thing.
Yeah, just as we send you off to be murdered at the front.
The UK Times and London Times, they're coming home with heads held high as Kieran Trippier gets carried off the pitch.
That just so you there, they're coming home, but no heads held high on the Irish version of that. It was just they like that. They know their audience a bit better.
Yeah, the Daily Telegraph have got a double whammy of sports sections these days. Their main sports section is Roger and Out.
I mean, that's mad. They don't even have the football on the front of their...
No, but they've got
a separate football.
They've got a separate World Cup section, which goes like so. "Hold your heads high, end of the world, but Kane insists this is just the start." And then finally this morning, it's The Guardian. "End of the dream. England out of the World Cup," as Gareth Southgate hugs Kyle Walker. Kyle Walker, one of the senior members of the squad there, although he's not that senior. He's like 28.
The hurt goes on.
Oh, the hurt goes... Oh, that was the front page of The Guardian. This is the back page. Yeah, the hurt goes on. Mandzukic breaks a valiant England.
Hey, that music means that it's time for us to go to Moscow, to our man in Moscow. John Duggan, good morning to you.
Jaron Owen, how are we doing?
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, good.
What was that game like last night?
It was much better than the first one in terms of atmosphere and drama, but the France-Belgium game was a better footballing game. I felt England were going to do it for the first half. I thought they should have been further ahead. Of course, they took it to Croatia early on, as we expected, with a lot of pace in the team. And I thought Croatia were sluggish. They were misplacing their passes. It was a great goal to open the scoring from Kieran Trippier. Another set piece. And then Harry Kane and Jesse Lingard had big chances at a World Cup semi-final. You've got to take them. And they started to defend a little bit deeper towards the end of the first half. And then that continued into the second half. When Perisic equalised, the whole thing began to change. And I thought, lads, England bottled it. I thought they choked. I thought they suffered under the spotlight of the occasion.
They're not really built to control games, though, if you consider that the central midfielder around whom everything has to work is Jordan Henderson, and his game isn't really changing the pace of the game or controlling it or understanding the ebb and flow of the match. It's like pass the ball sideways or pass the ball backwards and harry and tackle. Like, he's grand to a certain level if Lingard scores and if Harry Kane is scoring. Everything has to be going perfectly to have someone like Jordan Henderson be your linchpin central midfielder. But if you don't have somebody who can control the pace of the game, then you're screwed.
Well, I think they stopped passing the ball, and they'd passed the ball during the tournament, and once they conceded the goal, they started to use Pickford and I don't think people were like looking for the ball from him actively. And I thought he was rushing, and I thought he started pumping long balls, and which were going nowhere. And then Croatia gained more confidence in the fact that they were able to pass the ball in the field. And the more and more the game went on, I thought they were going to win it in normal time. I thought you could only see one winner, and Mandzukic got the winner in extra time. But Modric, again, outstanding. I think if there was, even if they lose the final, I think he's probably now the favourite for the Golden Ball. And just the way Brozovic was great in front of the defence, and Perisic just a complete menace all night down his left and England's right hand side. And there was a time like during the later stages of the second half where England were just hanging on for dear life. Walker and Stones. Walker was being exposed. His pace was helping him at times, but then the breather happened. You had the extra time, the breather for extra time. England got a bit of a second wind. Stones had a header cleared off the line by Vashelko. But once again, when Croatia came again, I think you're only going to see one winner. And to me, what I just saw out there was passing the ball and keeping the ball and being comfortable in possession. And I think England, whether they could or not do it, I think they forgot to do it.
I think you're right. And I think as well that kind of gives the lie to the notion that this is the start of something really special for England, that ultimately they've reached their ceiling in this tournament by virtue of the draw, by virtue of a few players playing well up to this point. But ultimately, unless they actually find a way to control games and to be comfortable in games when the opposition is actually better than them, you're not going to win a tournament. Like Croatia have been able to, in games where they've been trying to dig it out, they've been able to just kind of find pattern of play and pass the ball to each other because they've got that type of midfielder in the team. England, for example, if in the next tournament they get a tougher draw, will come up against Croatia in the round of the last 16 or in the round of the quarterfinals, and they'll have the exact same result, and they'll just blame the players for it. But actually, it's the system, it's the style of play, it's the fact that they're not creating players who can get on the ball in midfield and keep it for long portions of the game, take the sting out of the opposition.
Well, Brazil and Belgium would love to have been on this side of the draw. I think there are some positives for England in this. I think the way they conducted themselves and enjoyed it through the tournament was a good thing. I think it's a lesson for future tournaments that you just need to enjoy it, and you just need to be open and about your strengths and your weaknesses. I thought they were well set up during the tournament, but I think what I saw, and I've only missed one England game, which was the first one against Tunisia. What I saw from England during the tournament was against Tunisia, when they conceded, they reverted into the shell, and then Harry Kane saved them, and Harry Kane didn't have the best of nights last night. Against Colombia, when they conceded, for the first half of that extra time period, they were struggling. And once they conceded again last night, they lost their shape. They lost what they were doing early on. And to me, mentally, they bottled it. They couldn't handle the heat, the pressure. And that gave Croatia confidence to say, we're going to take these guys. We have the ball here now, and we're just going to try and create the space. And the chances will eventually come. And then they came. And Mandzukic, once again, in a big final, he scored in the Champions League final for Bayern Munich and for Juventus. Scores in a big game. Trippier and Walker and Stones all possibly at fault for that. So there's positives to be taken from a pride perspective for England, given the low base they were coming from. But there's a lot of work to be done on the basic techniques of possession, of being comfortable on the ball in these elite matches for future tournaments, and to be able to tactically change things. Should Southgate maybe have changed things tactically, and maybe changed, brought on a second midfielder, holding midfielder, brought on players quicker like Danny Rose, Jamie Vardy. Marcus Rashford didn't really make that much of an impact to me. And so it's a positive tournament in terms of enjoyment, in terms of a bit more pride and a bit more happiness as a nation. But in terms of winning football tournaments, there's still a bit to go for England. As I said yesterday to Owen on World Cup Daily, this might be the beginning of an England graph. They've had under-8 success at 17 and 20 level. This might be the beginning of their graph. It was not going to be the end of their graph. I think that was borne out last night. Croatia hadn't won a knockout game at a major finals in 20 years. So they've had a great run through the tournament themselves since their golden generation of Davor Šuker, Jarni, Prosneski, Zvonimir Boban, 1998, when they played France in the semi-final and lost 2-1. And now, of course, they play in France in their Croatia's first ever final on Sunday in Moscow. And what an amazing story for a country that had a brutal conflict with Serbia in the early 90s. Luka Modric's grandfather, one of the victims of that. And they've had a lot of hardship in Croatia. And I think they're a very passionate country, and they're going to enjoy the next few days.
Just one other thing on the England and their choking last night, because there is no question that they completely bottled it, and we know why that happened on the pitch. We know the players that allowed Croatia to make it seem thus. But why did England collapse mentally? Because if you compare the first half to the second half and to extra time, they clearly had enough in their squad to be able to control the ball a little bit better. So there was a mental lapse there, John, and I'm a little bit surprised that it did happen. Like, is it down to youth alone, or is it down to potentially just a lack of situational awareness?
I would say situational awareness. I'd say it's the stage that they're on. Your heads are up, you score. You've got plenty of chances to make it 2 or 3-0. You don't. And in all sports, it's like in all sports, pressure comes on, and it's how you deal with the pressure. And England these players have never been in this situation before. And once Croatia equalised, and then they nearly scored, Perisic nearly scored again. England were just, I thought they just froze in this situation. But we'd seen little signs of it before in the tournament. Like if Pickford hadn't saved those Berg efforts against Sweden, would England have retreated then? So I think it's a lack of awareness of what to do in these situations in a big tournament, and that's why you have players like Luka Modric and Ivan Rakitic, who have this experience at Champions League level in the deep stages of the Champions League, might be better equipped to handle that than England were last night.
What was the pre-match and atmosphere during the game like, and post-match? Did you see anything around? Were there much more English fans there? Obviously, Moscow's much easier to get to than where the quarter-final was, and we generally expected that there would be a slightly more well-heeled English fan there last night.
Well, I was delighted to see a much better atmosphere than I did on Tuesday in St. Petersburg for France-Belgium. Went down to the Luzhniki Metro before the game. Croatian and English fans mingling. French fans came out of a hotel from nowhere, and it was "Who the hell are you?" and it was "Go back to Paris," and they just started lapping it up, and then they all started singing La Marseillaise, which was quite funny. English fans, I wouldn't say they were well heeled. They were middle of the road. They were doing this Southgate song. Remember when the first time we met? Southgate, you're the one, you still turn us on, football's coming home again, and obviously it's not. But they were even singing that on the metro back from the stadium afterwards, and they were defiant. I found that the England fans were defiant and still happy despite their defeat, banging the doors of the metro and generally making a lot of noise, but in a positive way. And the Croatian fans and England fans mingled before the game. Great atmosphere inside the stadium, felt like a World Cup semi-final, felt like a real tense cauldron, and both teams let the blood, sweat and tears go out of themselves. So, but Croatia, it was beautiful to see. I think some of their children coming on and hitting the ball into the net. And some players there that have had issues, Modric and Lovren, who've had issues with a perjury trial back in their own country. And Croatia, who've been a team that on a good day can beat anybody, but on a bad day cannot even get out of a group, which they didn't in Brazil, are now in a final. Quite remarkable. And I still say France are strong favourites, but it is a final, and finals can conjure strange things.
Remember back in 2012, we were like, what we'll do is we'll do Croatia in the first game, and then we'll get a draw against Italy, and then Spain will beat us and we'll get out of the group. But it was like, well, Croatia are pretty good. Ireland not so good.
This Croatia team, as John just said there, has underachieved massively. And it's not just the scope of the last 20 years. It is, like Ger says there, like this decade. I mean, 2012, from a Croatian perspective, is viewed as an underachievement. Like it probably is, John.
Yeah, the last couple of decades have been an underachievement. Dalic just came in once again. The previous coach was sacked before the playoff against Ukraine. Shacked up. They won the match. They haven't been practicing penalties, but they do have a steel about them. And they've got, I think, once again, Brozovic was excellent last night as a shield. They have talented players in the team. Perisic plays for Inter Milan. You've got obviously the Barcelona, Real Madrid players. Mandzukic has been a top player at top clubs for the last few seasons. Dejan Lovren, of course, Liverpool fans would know that the goalkeeper was a hero against Denmark. So they're a good footballing team. For a country the size of ours, that's pretty impressive. And for a country that I think for a long time their biggest well-known world star was Goran Ivanisevic. So they've done well in the last 25 years since they came on the football scene as an independent nation. And I think they're going to be tired though, and I think France tactically need to get after Croatia early on in the final, because I think that if they do, they'll win it comfortably.
Yeah, a lot of people were suggesting that Croatia would be pretty tired after back-to-back games going to penalties. They've now had 3 successive games go to extra time, and yet conditioning doesn't seem to be an issue for them. They seem to be going great guns towards the end of the game last night.
Yes, I think that can be the ebb and flow of adrenaline, and it can be the confidence of equalising and feeling that you're about to win the game. And I think these things, I think it goes in waves in terms of the conditioning. But France have an extra day. I think France's midfield will cope with Croatia's midfield a lot better on Sunday. And a special all-European final, of course. And I think this is the 21st World Cup final. Pretty novel pairing. Don't think it's the pairing we expected. I'd love to have seen the odds in a France-Croatia final before the game, but Modric was just running the show at one stage last night. I don't think Dele Alli was picking him up quite a lot earlier on. But by the time it got to later on in the match, Modric was very much conducting the orchestra, as it were, in terms of the tempo of the game. And I don't think that'll happen on Sunday. And I expect France to be crowned world champions. I think France, as I said, are on their graph. There are teams that have done admirably, like Croatia have done, like Czechoslovakia, Sweden, in past World Cups and reached finals. I would have said that the Netherlands team in 2010 was a very ordinary team that reached a final. You can even say that Argentina's team, Messi aside, 4 years ago, was a relatively ordinary team. I'm not trying to in any way kind of take away from Croatia's achievement last night, but they played Denmark, Russia, and England to get to a mess of an Argentina team to get to a World Cup final. So you could argue that Croatia have also had the benefit of the draw a little bit as well in this World Cup.
Yeah, okay. So what do you expect from the final few days in Moscow, John?
Well, obviously, we'll see the influx of French and Croatian fans. I mean, there was a good Croatian attendance last night, better than the French on Tuesday. I'd hope to see a lot more French fans coming here. A lot of neutrals again last night. A huge amount of Russians in the fans, unceremoniously booing Domagoj Vida every time he got the ball, which was quite an insight. And then obviously it's the corporate interest in the World Cup final, because it's the hottest ticket, isn't it, in world sport, one of them. So obviously be interested to see what Deschamps and Dalit are going to say in the next few days, the build up to the game itself, and see what the sights and sounds of Moscow are like, and how Moscow will continue, because I felt in the last few days, or when I've come back here, that life is getting back a little bit to normal. You're not seeing as much colour on the metro. You're not seeing much colour around the town. I went down to Red Square yesterday. Didn't see that much going on. It was the same in St. Petersburg on Tuesday. So there's a little bit of a fin de siècle feel about the situation now. And there's only one game of 64 to play in this what's been an amazing World Cup. So hopefully now there'll be a bit of life around the city, and a good denouement to the tournament, to use a French phrase, when France play Croatia. And
a chance for you to get out and see a bit more of the city and see some of the sights. Anything in particular that's on your list?
I want to get into that Kremlin Palace, lads. You actually can get into it and see what's around, and I want to see Lenin's tomb if possible. There's a palace down as well in the south of the city, which I'd like to do. And I don't think we've spoken about this. You did see that I ate the meal. I went on assignment and ate that meal.
What was it like?
It was heavy, that's what I would say. On the edge of stodgy. I know what they do now. I think that's how they get through the winters. Having those meals. So I just said I want everything Russian on the menu. I went to this place called Cafe Pushkin, which is probably the most famous, traditional, beautifully designed eatery in Moscow, and had borscht, which is a kind of a beetroot soup, had a little venison pie, and then it had an assortment of Russian dishes for the main, which is beef stroganoff, a kind of a veal risole, some kind of veal wrapped in batter, dumplings, meat dumplings, and then they kind of pickles in a piece of pastry and a mushroom. So some of it I didn't eat. The dessert was a kind of like a coffee or a custard slice you get at a Colmore Cafe in Dublin. It was a bit like that. It was called a Napoleon Mifwe. And then they had to drink, because I'm not drinking. They had a non-alcoholic mule, and then they had this thing called kvass, which is a drink made of rye bread, which kind of smells like Belgian beer and kind of tastes tasteless. But look, it's stuff for the winters. It's stuff for the winters to get you through the cold. But don't think I'll be repeating it, but it was a good thing to experience.
Something to be endured as opposed to enjoyed.
Exactly, endured. I was enduring it a bit, and it cost €70. So I don't think I'll be repeating it today. But yeah, it'll be good to see the sights and sounds, and maybe have a glass of vodka when it's all over.
Well, enjoy. John, great stuff. Thanks very much.
All right, Darren, Owen, take care.
Undoubtedly one of our highlights of the World Cup has been the constant dispatches from Moscow, and all over indeed, coming from John Duggan, and you should follow him on Twitter for a look back on some of the stuff as we've enjoyed it across the course of the tournament. Now, let's move on. We're going to get Risteard's Russia going in just 1 second. We want to play you this, though. It is some Roy Keane goodness from last night.
The focus just on one game, and everyone was talking about the final.
What are you talking about?
The football's coming home. Go on, do your impression. Right.
We wasn't talking about the final like that. We were just having a laugh with you. The fact is, we were trying to just like, we were happy. You weren't happy for us being happy at that time. But I think that we were...
I don't mind you being happy, but you're like getting carried away. And I was right. You were planning the final where the parades were.
No, we weren't.
You were talking about, you did a reality check.
No, we weren't.
Why
should we get excited about it? It was something...
Yeah, get excited. Listen, get excited when they get to the final.
No, but
this was the semi-final, the group matches.
People didn't even expect us to get to the semi-final. What can we be excited about being in there?
Yeah, so Ian Wright giving out to Roy Keane. He wasn't the only one to be given out to Roy Keane. Ed Miliband tweeted, I want to get the exact correct tweet. There it is. Roy Keane is just awful. I am sorry.
Roy Keane is just awful. I'm sorry. He still hasn't quite managed to blow his nose, has he, when he's talking, regardless of what it is he's saying.
Risteard, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair, Owen. Thank you.
So, England are going home.
Yeah, they're going home. I mean, it's amazing, I think, the general reaction in Ireland to it. I mean, it seems to be split down the middle with regard to, can we actually say that we think England are really lucky, that they've been the luckiest team? I think they've been the luckiest. I can't remember an easier route certainly to the quarters. Even the quarters, Sweden didn't play well. I think they've been incredibly lucky to get this far, and they had the perfect start. And Croatia were miles better, I thought, for the rest of the game, and deserved to win.
Yeah.
I thought England were exposed. The weaknesses were exposed, and I personally, I'm happy because I couldn't stand it. I couldn't deal with it. More, it's the usual thing, like just more from the point of view of the fans' reaction and being completely over the top. Having said that, if the same thing was to have occurred in Ireland, how mad would we have gone?
Yeah, well, we're the best fans in the world, so it would have been England times a million, right?
I think so, yeah. It's coming home, I think, would have been the least irritating thing that Ireland could have come up with. It probably would have been jumping on the Gaelic bandwagon or something, but it was hard. Obviously the players seemed like a nice bunch of lads and all that. My son's a massive Spurs fan, and we've been over to Spurs a few times. And Harry Kane is a big hero of his, and he didn't play well.
No.
Yesterday, didn't really get much service, obviously. But they got this far essentially without a midfield. I mean, Jordan Henderson, and I don't want to say like I told you so, like Eamon Dunphy might do. But a week before he missed the penalty, I think I said in the studio, Jordan Henderson, Kenny Cunningham was sitting beside me. I think I said he's going to miss a penalty. If Jordan Henderson has to take a penalty in the penalty shootout, he has an English penalty missing head on him. Doesn't he? He does. He just has one of those heads that you kind of think, as soon as he was picked for England, you thought one day he's going to miss a penalty, and it wasn't vital as it turned out. But
will they ever win a World Cup, do you think?
It's a good question. I don't. This bunch of players, you kind of think if they missing this opportunity, I can't see them getting a better opportunity. They do have some good players. I mean, they definitely have some good attacking players. They've got some flair players that they probably didn't have before. A bit of a team ethic that they didn't have before, and Southgate seems to have instilled that. But Southgate's like this kind of, he's kind of this sort of muse, isn't he? He's sort of, you feel like there's some wisdom there. He kind of thinks a lot of things behind the scenes. Has some deep thoughts. I think he just speaks slowly. That's what it is.
So is it real? Like, is there depth to that, or is it just I've looked at everything, see how this works. Don't be loud and obnoxious. And
I've realised if I grow a beard and wear a waistcoat, I'll get away with a lot of stuff. I'm not sure. I think he probably has. I mean, I think it's real that the fact that the players have responded to him. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure how far. Ultimately, it doesn't carry you far enough to win a trophy if you don't have the players. I mean, it has to. It's stating the obvious, really. But I just don't. I think he'd get found out ultimately.
I think he definitely won friends and influenced people by being like not brash and arrogant, and we're going out there and we're going to win the World Cup. And Harry Kane has that same humility.
He does, and you know, it's the same. It's a similar kind of personality, and you know, I think that's what everybody jumped on as well. Is like, you know, Harry Kane seems he's a very untypical kind of English footballer, and they're saying that, you know, there's something really nice about Harry Kane. Somebody said to me recently, I think that's the Irish part, and you know, I know that sounds maybe like, you know, get you know, a little bit xenophobic, but he does have an unusual kind of, apart from the way he talks and all that, he does have a sort of there's a vulnerability there that's kind of appealing.
Like when everybody talks about this England team, it's like they're such nice people, as you say, they're so humble, and it's like people are like, well, how do you actually know that? How do you know the real England? And it's like, well, their PR has been excellent, and it's like, well, that's the point of PR.
Indeed. No, absolutely. And I suppose Gareth Southgate has had that effect as well, where he's invited the press in a way that they haven't had exposure to before, and they feel, I think, that they know the players, and maybe a little bit better. They're kind of fearless. They have that. But again, it's a PR angle, isn't it? It's not. I mean, how real is anything like that? If it's manufactured, it's obviously, you know, you'd suspect it's not really 100% genuine. But you know, the media reaction over there, the Roy Keane piece he played earlier. I mean, you know, Keane giving out hell to Ian Wright, and I mean, it's like we were saying earlier. Like, England are desperate. You know, the nation are desperate to have something positive to cling on to. With what's happening politically, it's just so negative over there. It must be horrific, and
it's an amazing time. This coalescence of events where, like, their political system is falling apart. The Tory party is eating itself to try and escape from Europe, and people are beginning to actually turn back towards Europe. Like, while the team is actually doing well by being humble and not by being this all-conquering, aggressive, empire-building wankers that we all hated all our lives. It's like, that's such a weird thing to happen.
But it was a fear as well, I think. Certainly, I think, in my neck of the woods, or my perspective, that if England did win, that there'd be a certain amount of Brexiteers like that would
go, told you so. You know, told you. We're much better off leaving Europe, because therefore we win the World Cup, because we're the best team in the world.
Tommy Robinson.
Exactly, kind of justify that extreme opinion. But I like, you know, Keane, whatever you think about him, he's consistently inconsistent, isn't he? You know, and he said the same about when Ireland were knocked out, you know, Thierry Henry, that, you know, I don't know what Shea Given is doing letting the ball bounce. What's Shea Given doing letting the ball bounce? It's not the moment, you know. Tragedy plus time. Crimes and misdemeanors, Woody Allen, tragedy plus time, let it rest. We need time to digest this. Rather than, well, that was our own fault for letting the ball bounce. What's he doing that for?
It was exactly the same. We accused John Stones of ball watching. We see it every week.
Yeah.
That was it last night.
Watching, what's he doing that for? So I get, okay, you know, not now, Roy. Not now. And he's on English telly. And Ed Miliband, I'd say, was the most moderate of reactions he got on Twitter.
Yeah. I wonder, is he talking himself out of a job from, like, chairman of clubs in England, going, hang on a second.
Yeah, well, I think his football probably did that. His management skills. You know, I mean, Dunphy obviously had a proper crack at him as well. I don't know when that was. It was a few days ago. That he doesn't have any insight. You know, there's no real insight. He's you know, spouting on. Yeah. Does that ring a bell, Eamon?
No.
No. Anyway.
We're getting to that point now where we can judge about the what type of a World Cup the various pundits have had. How has the RTE panel evolved this time? Because obviously they're trying to inject new blood. It's the first ever World Cup without John Giles on our TV, so it's a different time.
It's interesting, like like the Dunphy Brady kind of axis, the Dunphy Brady accord, where they seem to be kind of displaying how much they agree with each other more than any other year. Like, I can't remember, and it's almost like to make the other person on the panel feel less comfortable, particularly if it's somebody new who fancies themselves, like Keith. Or even the Duffer. Like, I thought the Duffer had a great match last night. Actually, I thought he was really good last night. But it's literally like, you know, Dunphy is what became more English, I think, than the English themselves. Is that, you see, these are a great bunch of guys. They're great people, and I think, you know, they're our neighbours, and you know, we should support them. And it's like this forward-thinking, you know, philosophical Eamon. You know, it's the modern approach, and I'm not going to be backward. And but you know, they all said that to a man that England were going to win, and then Eamon says the greatest after the match. He says the quote is the great credit tonight goes to Liam for seeing the potential in Croatia. You go, what? He gets all the credit? Like, you know, was he playing? Did he have anything? And it's all because he's put all his money on Croatia. That's what it actually boils down to. Even though he said that beforehand, he said, you know, it's not going to do me wallet any favours, but I think England are going to win. And you know, and yes, I agree with Eamon. Yeah, well, I agree with Liam. And Liam is right to agree with me, because if he doesn't, he'll be bullied. You know, and that's kind of essentially the little axis. And you know, Duffer was sort of like, you know, the whole thing is pointless anyway, because there's no point in me saying anything, because, you know, I'll just be interrupted by one of them, and you know, what's the point anyway, and just get on with it, and everything's so obvious, what's the point in saying it? And
it does feel that way. It's like Duffer's kind of like, I mean, you're asking me these dumb questions to explain this thing. It's like,
well, he actually asked Dunphy a question last night before the game, which I thought was like, because you're banging the money about it, it is 2 versus 1, and they're constantly surveying the person on the right. Yeah. And Duffer actually kind of took it upon himself to ask Dunphy a question last night. He was like, why are Croatia so good in such a situation? Is it fitness or is it skill? And of course, Dunphy's like, character. It's all about character.
Yeah, it's all about character. Yeah. You see, I know what character means. And you know, the fact that I know the fact that he deferred to Eamon was, I like the respect he's given on the panel is quite extraordinary, I think, given the level of nonsense and the hypocrisy. I mean, it's just, he says one thing and literally says the other thing 5 minutes later. Yeah. And you know, and it's like, who do you think Dara would say? So who's your favourite, Eamon? Who do you think's gonna, like, who do you think will prevail? And Eamon is, that sounded actually more like Eamon Dunphy. But anyway, switching. But Eamon has literally said Spain, Argentina, you know, France, Brazil, you know, that's where my money's going. And it's like, you know, somebody who bets on a regular basis, they'll never tell you if they've lost money. Yeah. You know, it's because they realise that Croatia would beat England, but they wanted England to win, which is why we put my money on it. But, you know, I knew Croatia would actually win, you know. So, okay, do you? Makes no sense. At all.
Have they had a good World Cup? Have Brady and Dunphy had a good World Cup? Because at some point this is coming to an end. This could be the last Dunphy World Cup. We don't know. They don't like formally announce. But it feels like it's getting to that point where there's enough new people now that we don't really need Dunphy on TV anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's too much of that. I think there's too much of that. You know, there's kind of a pact between them almost, and it's like Eamon used a great word to describe Croatia. What was it, Eamon? Efficient. They're very efficient. It's like, did he invent the word? Yeah. You know, come on. We don't need that kind of level of. I just think it's. Yeah, I'd prefer. I like it when it's mixed up. I think Keith has had a great World Cup. Keith Andrews. I think he's really good. Knows his stuff. Knows the players, stats.
Does work.
Works.
Yeah. That's a big thing. It's like does some research.
Yeah, and I just like his presence. I think it's a good combination, and I also think the younger blood brings out the better things in the presenters. I think Dara's more comfortable with people around his own age, and I think Dara's. It's obviously really tough for Dara to have inherited Bill's shoes, because that was the quartet. You know, Bill, Eamon, Giles and Brady, and there's sort of a bit of it left. So it's I think it's a tough gig for anyone presenting it, because Liam and Eamon are like, you know, the bullies in the corner. And so, yeah, you think so, do you, Dara? Yeah. You know, there's a bit of that. You're happy with that question, are you?
Show us your medals.
Yeah, show us your medals. Yeah.
What about Peter Collins? How's he getting on?
Well, I think Peter's had an interesting one. You know, we were talking about his reaction to Hope Solo the other day, but he has a way of asking questions, which is, I mean, do you think Brazil will be disappointed not to have won that match? I mean, insofar as, of course, they're going to be disappointed, but like, do you think they'll be disappointed because they didn't play their best, or do you think they did play their best, or do you think Neymar's had a good World Cup or a bad World Cup? I mean, Neymar, he's had a bit of a sort of an indifferent World Cup, really hasn't by Neymar's standards. By that I mean that he, you know, and it tends to be a world record longest question. So they don't know when to get in. Do we answer that bit? No, are we going back to the? So yeah, but yeah, and I think he tends to explain things that are. Now that's all we have time for. So we are going to a commercial break, which are a series of ads, which happen after I say a commercial break. There's a bit of that. But lovely fella. But you feel he'd be more comfortable on a bike.
Yeah.
Sitting on a bike or in a vroom, or with a helmet on. He has that vibe about him. He's a bit of a DJ voice, hasn't he? You kind of think, I'm presenting the football. What am I doing here? I don't know, but vroom, let's go. There's a bit of that going on.
What about the BBC and the rest of the stuff over there? Like, how have they got on? They've top names, obviously.
Yeah, they do, and
Kilbane.
Kilbane. Kevin just agrees with everything, I think, doesn't he? He's just that, you know. No, I think absolutely. But you know, say something like Brazil have had a pretty disappointing. Yeah, they've been disappointed. I think Brazil, you know, they really have. I just don't think they've had it this time. You know, they haven't really had it a lot. Defensively, they've been great, haven't they? But actually, I don't think Brazil. I thought Brazil were unlucky. Yeah, I think they were unlucky. I thought they were quite unlucky, actually. I agree. Yeah, I think they were quite unlucky. But they didn't deserve. No, they didn't deserve it. No, didn't deserve it. England deserved it. Yeah, I thought England were great. I thought England, but they were crap. Yeah, they were crap as well. Sorry, Kev.
He's got to be waiting outside now.
Yeah, he'll be waiting outside.
Back in the country. He's finally back. He can.
It was interesting. I thought the dynamic between Lineker and Ferdinand, and because Ferdinand, like he was really trying to rally the troops. Not that they needed to be rallied, but he was full of, you know, a lot of, you know, almost like Churchill-esque type of language. But Klinsmann in the middle, trying not to laugh, I thought, is no, I really hope that you do well this time. I really hope you do well in the semi-finals, knowing that, you know, the disaster was imminent. He's a really interesting accent, I think, because it's a kind of a combination of German and American. He's learned a lot of his English, I think, in American. I obviously played for Spurs, but it's a kind of mad kind of combination. It's like he should be a baddie in a movie, James Bond movie.
Yeah, all the Germans, like Boris Becker I love watching Becker on Wimbledon because it doesn't make any sense. It's just like...
No, that's right. And Boris has this kind of thing he does with his eyes. There's a very strange thing. He kind of squints and then he goes, "Oh yes, that's right."
You know, he goes, "Oh, to make the point." Yes.
Oh, I don't know what you mean.
That was brilliant. Actually, I was switching between Nadal and Del Potro. Pity they met, I think.
Yeah.
Just to veer towards tennis for a minute.
So early, yeah.
Del Potro, I've always liked him. Yeah. The tennis lads are they kind of refer to the football as well, don't they? It's like you know, we know about football, we've heard of that.
Yeah.
You know, while they're doing this. Yeah.
Saw a game once.
Yeah, well, we saw a game once, and good luck to the English, whoever they're playing. The working classes.
Obviously, the other thing.
It's great for them, isn't it? The working classes.
We've even got a hill for them that they can watch the big screen from sometimes.
Yeah, that's right.
We let them in if they watched. There's a lot of stuff about the size of Croatia and the size of Ireland and the lessons that we as a footballing nation can learn from, despite the fact they're all on average like 1.5 feet taller than us, and you know, they've got a bit more killer instinct than we do as a.
They seem to be more wiry and sinewy, and their physical, their demeanour. But yeah, it was that was the question. I think there was on the panel between Martin O'Neill and Bilic. Bilic basically owned Martin O'Neill at one point during it, and the question was, you know, about Martin O'Neill took him on foolishly. I think Martin O'Neill got some strength or some impetus from Roy Keane, who obviously, you know, Roy is a different specimen altogether. And but Martin said to Bilic, yeah, well, you know, you've done very well, you know, but absolutely, you've done very well indeed. But you know, you're very similar size to Ireland. And Bilic says, yes, with better footballers. And Martin just kind of, yes. And he couldn't say anything. Was amazed that he said it live on air, and all he could say was, yes. So I agree with you, Slaven, but don't say that out loud, please.
So what's the lesson for us?
The lesson for us is, what can Ireland learn? I would say get the Croatian manager. Would be personally my take on it. I mean, you know, there's always that question: is do Ireland have the players? Do we? And particularly now, the opportunities Irish players get, whatever about English players, whatever the opportunity they get in the Premiership. And I actually think England have done incredibly well from that point of view, when you think of it. Like, I mean, because it's always been that argument for the last, 10 years that England's national team has suffered so badly because of the fact that they don't regularly play Premiership football.
Or Champions League,
Or Champions League.
Almost never.
And Irish players, obviously, are even further down the ladder now, compared to, like, Italia 90, compared to even more recently. There were more players on the Irish team playing regular first-team football for top clubs. But I'm not sure it's ever going to change really now. I think you know, you have to be kind of remarkable, a remarkable Irish player, and any kind of remarkable Irish player who has the possibility of playing for England is going to be playing for England, I would have thought.
Yeah, the Jack Grealishes of the world. You guys are taking over the third place playoff as tradition decrees, is that right? Yes, as tradition decrees. Yeah, I don't know how many times we've done it. I think we've done it every World Cup since 1998, remarkably. And I think it was done initially as a kind of a, you know, as a joke, obviously. But so yeah, it's a nice match for us to do. Another vital match, England-Belgium. Their first match was meaningless enough. This is particularly meaningless. So yeah, we're presenting it course to 4, is it, on Saturday? And so yeah, we have a few things lined up. Off the boil captains, not one of them actually. Did you see that? Yes. Yeah. Did you wonder who you were, or were you represented? I wasn't, surely. No.
Yeah. No, you weren't. It was a kind of a hybrid. It was a hybrid of off the ball, and Eoin wasn't in it, obviously.
Obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
The other Eoin was, though. McDavitt was there. Right?
There was a kind of a McDavitt Joe combination. But yeah, I've been working on Joe. I'm gonna try and get Joe, because he's just kind of so. I think his voice is so kind of soft, and I think he likes the sound of his own soft tones. So there's a bit of that. But it's a really interesting thing, because when coming in, as I did a few times with Joe, I just find that, as you'd suspect, if I'm around people, I just kind of start taking them on, and just kind of they get under you. And but Joe is one of those, as that effect. Yeah, so we're on at quarter to 4, and we're doing the whole shebang. If it goes to extra time and penalties, there'll be a fair bit of improvisation.
Well, enjoy. Who's going to win the final?
I'd say France. I'd love Croatia to win, but I think France will.
Risteard, great stuff. Thanks very much. Enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Best of luck at the weekend.
Thank you.
Tommy Walsh is standing by. We'll get to it in a minute. Here's some Johnny Cohen hot action.
Now, the thing that has been thrown to Galway was, yes, you finally won your All-Ireland last year, but you didn't beat Kilkenny on the way, therefore it made it maybe a little less valuable. Now, plenty would dispute that, obviously, but you've managed to beat Kilkenny twice now this year. I assume you might like a crack at them in an All-Ireland final as well?
I don't know, like, Kilkenny really have been the mantra for the last 20 years, and like the work that Brian Cody has done has been absolutely exemplary, and I don't think anyone can you know give out about what they've achieved or anything like that. You know, we were delighted with what we came up with last year. You know, they didn't progress to the Leinster final, we didn't get a crack at them or anything like that, but so be it. There's enough teams out there, you know, with huge amount of determination, huge amount of hurling ability, and you know, we're always kind of looking at our own performance, and whoever you're playing, if you're not at your very, very best, you're not going to win the game, and that's it.
Johnny Cohen of Galway speaking with more trust in Catholic. Now, Tommy Walsh, good morning to you. How you doing?
Good morning, Owen. Good morning, Ger.
You do some impressions, right? You did it. There was a famous one of you on YouTube which disappeared at one point of you doing a Cody impression.
Yeah. Depends on how many drinks you had, how good it was, I'll tell you that.
That was a bus journey or something, was it? Or was it an All-Ireland celebration? I was there for a while and then somebody obviously got it taken down. I don't know who.
Yeah, well, I worked very hard to get that taken down, Ger. Put it that way.
Well,
I was up early the next day.
Well, you're free to do it anytime you want. I'm just going to extend that offer to you right now. Let's talk a bit about these games of the weekend. What's the turnaround for Kilkenny actually like? What are they doing this week to try and make sure that whatever good about last week is the thing that the players will take with them, as opposed to the fact that they're tired and they've been beaten after a replay?
Yeah, I think, Gerard, it's not physically at all that they need to, I suppose, look after themselves. It's mentally. It's after a loss like that, because they put so much into the first day with the chance of winning, that I suppose they will look back with kind of regret and disappointment that they aren't straight through to the All-Ireland semi-final. So I think what Brian Cody has to do this week is just recharge the guys mentally and freshen it up. I think if Kilkenny are to win, like Brian has he's a record of changing around the team drastically after either a loss or a draw since '99, since he took over. I mentioned before the last day, like he had an average of 3 after every drawn game, and I'd say it's even bigger after a loss. Changes on the team, and that's just subs coming in. He also changes around the structure of the team. So I think it will be, we've seen, I think it's 9 out of 10 teams that played 3 weeks in a row in the round robin series lost. So that will tell you that history is going against Kilkenny this weekend. So if I'm part of that set up, I think the whole thing is we need to freshen it up, because it's not physically. Like you see in the World Cup, how guys can go 3 or 4 days after and they play 5, 6, 7 games. So I think for these guys, it's mentally. So I just freshen up the whole team, make a few position switches. For the only one reason is just to freshen it up, not any other reason. And I think if they do that, they'll have a great chance. But I think if they go back out with similar enough old team, just 1 or 2 changes, I think they'll be under pressure with fatigue, mental fatigue.
Yeah, the other thing is that we don't really know where Limerick are at. It's been a while since we've kind of seen them play a match of this intensity. Obviously, they had a run out in the meantime, and that was kind of a bit of target practice for them and will be useful in some ways. So there's a bit of an unknown quantity about them outside of Munster this season. And it's a very unusual situation. Obviously, like these two teams, they don't meet that often. Obviously, there was the famous All-Ireland semi-final, is that 07? Is that as far back as that? So it's been a while, really, since we've had too many meaningful games between them. Like, it's not an easy game for either side to prepare for in that respect.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that will be going for Kilkenny, is there's going to be massive pressure on Limerick. Like this is the team, like I always spoke about before with the Kilkenny guys. They were very lucky to win All Ireland in their first few years. So 19, 20, 21 years of age winning All Ireland, it didn't matter what happened after that. You had that confidence that you could do it on the biggest stage of all. Well, this Limerick team should have beaten Kilkenny in Nolan Park last year, albeit they were very young and there's probably a few different changes. This year then, they came out of the blocks. They were the team of the summer, really. As far as the Munster Round Robin series were going, they're talking about being Munster champions, the team that could put it up potentially to Galway in the All-Ireland series. Suddenly in the last game against Clare, who might, the week before, if that got beaten by Tipperary, mightn't have even made the top 3. Suddenly they beat Limerick and they're out. They don't even make a Munster final. So now this is their first big game since. And like if they lose this, well, then that will kind of be, it'll be a scar, a mental scar. Now, it's not going to stop him, but it'll be a mental scar for him next year. When you go back training in the winter, you'll be saying, no matter what happens, the early part of the year, like they already won Division 1B as well. So whatever happens then, if they get beaten, say, this Sunday, they'll go be in train, they'll be doubting themselves. When it comes to it, can we actually do it? Towards if they beat Kilkenny this weekend, they're in an All-Ireland semi-final. So that's progress straight away. These guys, they're All-Ireland Under-21 champions 2015, 2017. They've won club championships, club All-Irelands. But this actual inter-county senior team haven't. So to win this weekend, there's massive pressure on them. And that's the one thing you will see. Like these tense games, there's no full flow out of a team when you're playing a game like this. So that's the one thing that I suppose a massive challenge for this Limerick team.
Yeah, Brendan Cummins would go along with that. He was saying in the Irish Independent this morning that it's going to haunt them for years if they lose at the weekend, which is putting a huge amount of pressure on this team. But you're right in what you say, and like to a certain extent, could you compare it to Galway at the weekend? Because it kind of felt like the ghosts of Kilkenny's past had been exercised by Galway at the weekend to hold off that Kilkenny comeback. And it seems like a weird thing to say, given they are favourites for the All-Ireland, given they are All-Ireland champions. But this is the extent of the shadow that Kilkenny have had on everybody else. And to lose one could mean years and years of pain, like it seemed to have been the case for Galway over the last few years.
Yeah, Owen, and I think if you go back and look at Galway last Sunday, when it was really put up to them, where did it draw the courage from? Where did it draw the bravery to go on and just stick at it? It was from their champions. They know that on the biggest stage of all, they've done it. They were under serious pressure in last year's All-Ireland semi-final, and they pulled it out of the bag in the last 10 minutes. They're under serious pressure. Like, there was only 3 points in it, I think, with a few minutes to go in the All-Ireland final last year. So they know that they've done it on the biggest stage of all. There's different individual players for that Galway team stood up at different times last year. So it wasn't just a one-man show. So that meant they could all draw upon that experience this year when they played Kilkenny. You go back to the 2015 All-Ireland final, the 2012 All-Ireland final. When the pressure came on, Galway's body language just, it was terrible. It went down. They looked like guys that didn't want to be there. They were praying for the final whistle. Towards last Sunday, there was different guys stepping up all over the field. Cathal Mannion, Joe is having probably the summer of his career, I'd say, at the moment. He's really, really going well. And just different guys at different stages. So I think that came from being champions. Towards this Limerick team, last year they were beaten by Kilkenny, and they felt, if you listen to any of their interviews, they felt they should have took Kilkenny last year in Nolan Park. So that will, until they get over the line, like, they won't have that experience of winning like Galway had.
Ultimately, when you look at last weekend as well, and when Limerick looked down to look at that game to analyse it, there was, like, putting it bluntly, there was a 15 minutes there where Galway tore Kilkenny apart. They absolutely destroyed them, and it looked like it could have been a bloodbath come the end of the game. Like, surely there's something in that Limerick can learn from. It wasn't all about Galway being amazing. There was surely chinks in the Kilkenny armour for a huge period of that opening quarter.
Yeah, and Galway probably opened them up, and that's what Limerick will probably try to do. If you see the difference between the Leinster final the first day, Kilkenny were very much a solid unit from probably half-forward line back. Last Sunday in Thurles, probably a smaller field, and Galway opened them up and gave the forwards the ball they needed. You look at the Limerick team, like, they're so exciting. You'd always know if a team has a great chance in an All-Ireland of bringing back the Lee McCarthy by their players. And, like, you go through the team, you have young Flanagan corner forward, you have Gillan full forward, you have Shane Dowling maybe to come on, you have Declan Hannon centre back, Keane Lynch midfield, all exciting players, Kyle Hayes centre forward, Garrod Hegarty, his father played in the 94-96 All-Irelands. Like, this is the next great Limerick team. Like, the last great Limerick team was that team in the mid-90s. I used to love them. They were my favourite team growing up. I could still nearly name out all the team. And they didn't get over the line. Like, there was that famous comeback by Johnny Dooley and the Offaly boys in 94. Daithí Regan was there, our own Daithí Regan. Like, this is the next great Limerick team. And I'm sure the likes of Ger Hegarty will be saying it to Garrod, like, listen, just do everything right. When the game is there to be won, just have no regrets. Go for it. Don't forget about the pressure. And that's what they'll probably have. They'll have guys talking to them of their experience back in the mid-90s. And that might help them get over the line, because this is an exciting team and they have the players all over the field. And they will try and open up this Kilkenny team because they have forwards that can blitz you. We've seen the scores that Limerick have done. They've huge scores racked up this year. We've seen then the last... like, momentum is a massive thing. Like, the three you were talking about the World Cup a few minutes ago. Look at England. They won their first game 2-1, kind of a last minute goal against Tunisia. Next minute to go on and win 5 or 6-1, and suddenly they're in the World Cup semi-final. So that's momentum. Look at the Kildare footballers there. Like, they hadn't won a game in months, or I think was it even 12 months. Suddenly they're in the Super 8s. Go back, Ray Keane, the great Ray Keane, when he was he got the yellow card in the Champions League final, the Champions League semi-final, was it against Juventus? and suddenly puts in the greatest performance he's ever put in because he doesn't care anymore, and he's not even thinking about football. Off he goes, and just momentum takes him to one of his greatest performances. Look at the provincial finalists in the football. 3 of them are gone. You have Cork, a shadow of themselves. Fermanagh, a shadow of themselves from the provincial championships. And Laois gone as well. So momentum is a massive thing, and that's what Limerick have going for them this Sunday.
I'm getting hammered here. I've been saying all week I don't believe in momentum, but I know what you're saying. The confidence of the teams. It's like everybody who's come on has basically called me an idiot for saying this, but that's fine. Yeah, I get it, Tommy. I see the point you're making.
But what is momentum really, Ger, I suppose? It's confidence.
Exactly. That's my point, is that it's the
backtracking.
It's the benefits that you get from playing well.
I didn't hear you saying that now, Ger.
That's all right.
But
the lads here are laughing. They're in convulsions here.
Yeah.
Okay, they're all good examples.
You're trying to think of it. What is momentum? That's what it is. It's confidence. I read somewhere during the week, I think it was Kieran Shannon in the Examiner, talking about what is fitness really. Fitness is probably the ultimate confidence booster. Yeah. Because if you're doing massive amount of running, or what is it really? Because every other team is doing it, but it gives you yourself a massive confidence.
Yeah, and the belief that you're going to be able to actually get through this, which is the point you're making about Galway being able to pull on those reserves as well. Just before I ask you about the Clare game, is that St. Kieran's in the background? That's the famous black and white jersey of Kieran's.
It is the famous black and white jersey, but no, it's not Kieran's this time. That's Turlough Dahi Burke's club up in Galway. They're the Féile champions from this year, Division 1. It was on the National Féile was a few weeks ago. They're the Division 1 champions. Across the road from that's Ballygalget up and down. They won the Division 2 Camogie Féile and the Cup. And I suppose the point I'm just trying to make is we're now in the middle of the inter-county season. We're having such a great time that we could forget about the clubs again. And now is the time to sort out the club structures for next year, because we need that 50-50 that I keep talking about. Why did I put them photos? Look at the joy in the Ballygalget. Say there's babies, there's young people, old people in them photographs. The joy a win like that brings to a whole parish. Like I was getting texts about some of them results in the Féile. Like a whole place, whether it's 1,000 or 3,000, they go down, and like I know in Tullaroan, if we ever win a championship, whether it's from under 13 right up to adult level, they'll come down in a trailer from the church, the whole parish rallies around and they cheer them off. And like that goes on right around the country. So I suppose the point I'm trying to make is the inter-county is great. I love both of them, club and county. But let's sort out the club for next year, because we could easily forget about it, Ger.
That's the thing. The games have been so good. The championships have been so good. The matches that are left in the championship are all going to be amazing. But it would be so easy to just go, everything is grand because the top of the tree is grand. And that's not the case.
That's not the case. But we could get it. And it's up to both guys like myself and the lads in the club to drive it on from the club to the county board, and the county board to Crow Park, and the guys up there, them committees, and everyone sort this out together, because we all know that it has to be done. Like this year is one of my toughest of club hurling, because you just don't know when you're playing, and it'd be even better if you just said, right, it's starting and it'll be over in 2 months. At least you have a focus, start and an end, towards you're kind of humming and hawing the whole year this year. And don't get me wrong, I retired in 14, 15, 16 and 17 were 3 brilliant years. They were wonderful years of club hurling that I enjoyed thoroughly. This year has just been a disaster, because you just don't know when you're playing. And even we're back playing now, really kind of focused on championships because it's coming up soon, and I'm injured. So I trained for about 5 or 6 months. I never get injured really, and suddenly I'm out and they're playing matches in training, and there's big numbers down training. So just, let's keep that focus, and we all know it has to be done, but just make sure now is the time to sort it out. Have the meetings now and sort it out.
Yeah, fair enough. One quick question about the Clare Wexford game. What do you think is going to happen in this one?
Well, she have the Davy Derby, and what does the GA love better than a derby match? Like, you go through any of the counties in Ireland, when the clubs, if Tullaroan are playing Ballycallan, if Lisdowney are playing Freshford, the town teams, the Village and O'Loughlin's, say Limerick and Clare, will say, Kilkenny and Tip. Sure, it just stirs emotions everywhere. So the Davy Derby, I can't wait for it. And I know they have no rivalry really, Wexford and Clare, but I'm sure it's going to be boil to boiling point really with Davy on the line. So I can't wait for it. I think Clare will do it because I think, you know, Wexford have the sweeper system, which I suppose I don't believe in. They have great players. Wexford, they've won a lot underage, and Rory O'Connor is a special talent, Lee Chin is a special talent. But I think if Clare can get over the disappointment of the Munster final, because I think that could take a lot out of them, and it'll be the opposite of momentum. So if Clare don't have not got over the Munster final, Wexford will win. But if Clare come to the game at all, I think they'll win.
Just one last one for me, Tommy, just from a Clare perspective. Obviously, John Conlon, if they win at the weekend, is going to be in the picture for Hurler of the Year, you'd imagine, especially if they get to an All-Ireland final. He'd probably be one of the favourites. But I'm sure you saw that Sunday Independent article the week before last where he's talking about building a house and how that's kind of forced him to take his mind off hurling to a certain extent, where he's still putting a lot of time into it, but not as time as he previously would. Like, from your own experiences, how big an advantage is that, where you've got the kind of a distraction and kind of a deliberate distraction, because sometimes it can be too much of a focus. It can get into your head a little bit too much to focus on the inter-county game.
Yeah, no, it is a great point, really. My thing, I would always love variety. So I go through times where it'd be like that, like John Conlon. You need to take your eye off the game for a while, relax, enjoy it a bit more. Suddenly you're going out then having great performances. Then you go through a bit of that for a while on, and it's funny. You change it around, right? Listen, I need to put in focus here. So you go mad the other way for a few weeks. I find there's no one way works. If you go one way for too long, you just become predictable. It becomes normal. You think you're doing the right thing, and it'll just happen. Like, you know, you'd ever hear guys, he does something one game, plays well, so he stays doing it. That only lasts so long. So my whole belief is to stay fresh. I'm a big believer in freshness. So I'd be like John Conlon, do that for a while. Suddenly, when that's all done, change it around and put your focus back on hurling 24/7.
One last
so
thing.
Variety, I would believe.
Speaking of variety, Joe Canning, obviously, we've seen him score sidelines all over the country. Thurles, we've seen him do it in Galway, we've seen him do it in Croke Park as well, in front of 80,000, in front of almost nobody, but never, I'd say, was there more pressure than when Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were watching yesterday. Straight over the bar. There's pictures of Meghan Markle's face. It's like, I'd say Harry was, when he saw the picture, was a bit like, oh, she doesn't look at me like that.
Are they doing the sideline competition next week? No. I might go up. Sure, that's unreal. You know, pressure moment, and the big man delivers again. So he's well used to doing that up there. Fair play to him.
Yeah, a Pizza Wednesday is the line on Instagram, indeed. Tommy, enjoy the games this weekend. Thanks a million.
Thanks a million, lads. Best of luck.
Tommy Walsh with us there this morning, previewing the matches. I'm looking forward to these two. I think they're going to be riotous. I think that a lot of these games have been riotous, where a team gets up to 8, 12 points, and then suddenly it's a point in it. You're like, what the hell, how did that happen? And I have a feeling that this Limerick game, you can see both of those teams being capable of getting a massive run on the other side, and then both of those teams being eminently capable of closing it really quickly.
Yeah, it just goes to show the unbelievable competition you've got at the top tier of inter-county hurling at the moment, where there is a lot on the line for this Limerick team this weekend, and it seems so harsh to say it about such a young side, but there is. It is make or break for the side. To lose to Kilkenny this year, I completely agree with Tommy, would to a certain extent be detrimental for their progress.
Yeah,
and the upshot is similarly huge if they win.
That's the thing. I think that they're probably not at that stage yet where it's completely do or die the way maybe it is with a Mayo team, for example, like over the last couple of years. Sure. They still probably have a year or two to build.
Or at Waterford last season, exactly. when they beat Kilkenny after losing to them the previous year. I do take your point. Maybe we're being a little bit too harsh about it.
Because they've come so far so quickly, it's hard sometimes to remember that.
And the thing is, if they get to an All-Ireland final against Galway, then you're not having this conversation. You're like, this is a learning experience for Limerick against Galway. So maybe it isn't do or die this season, but the upshot, there's no question about that, it would be gigantic if they won on Sunday.
Waterford are a good example to remember in terms of the England football team as well. That the whole notion that it automatically, this is a young team, they'll get better, they'll be better next season. In 2 years' time at the European Championships, Harry Kane could be injured, Raheem Sterling might not play well, they might not still have the same quality of squad depth or whatever. That might have been it for England. Who knows? One last piece of hurling to talk about before we move on. Harry Redknapp's coming your way in just a minute. Here is Seamus Harnedy from Cork talking to Maura Trassa on Inishmore.
look, the Munster series is wrapped up. We weren't happy with how the All-Ireland series went last year, so the ultimate focus now just switches to last Sunday 3 weeks. So looking forward to that, but everything hinges on that day now again. You know, six teams left in it now at the moment. It could cause anyone trouble. I think the championship is wide open. Obviously Galway are on a great run at the moment, being champions last year and, you know, winning out Leinster as well this year, so they're on a great run, but any of the teams can cause you hassle. We've had ding-dong battles with Clare this year, you know, Limerick as well. We're very lucky to get a draw against them, but look, it's wide open. We're under no illusions. If you turn in a substandard performance against any of these teams, you know, you will be under serious pressure, but thoroughly looking forward to the opportunity and challenge that's ahead. It's parked and it's time to move on to the All-Ireland series.
And that's what you're looking towards now. You're in a good place, but obviously last year you guys had a bit of a capitulation once you got to that series. What are you going to do this year differently?
Yeah, I suppose, look, we had a bad 15 minutes, you know, a quarter of an hour towards the end of that semi-final, but look, we have to take the learnings from that and move on now. We're really, you know, anxious, and we're looking forward to, you know, the challenge that's presented, and we really, really, really want to put on a good performance in the semi-final.
Yeah, Seamus Harnedy there speaking with Maurice Johnson. They had plenty of time. It's a big break between the Munster final and the All-Ireland semi-final, and if they get that right, then that's a massive advantage for them. But that can also just lead to a little bit of rustiness for the first 15-20 minutes of an All-Ireland semi-final against a team who will be coming in with the Big Mo.
The Big Mo on their back. But like on an actual kind of using actual expertise there, what Tommy Walsh said there at the end about John Conlon could be applied directly to Cork to stay fresh. That the kind of burden of freshness is now on Cork rather than on the schedule.
Yeah, but talking to Fraggy Murphy, we had him on just afterwards. He seemed pretty confident they're going to be able to deal with it. Like,
yeah, I'm sure they will be.
Like a complete rest. It's almost like there's a new season starting for the semi-final and final for those teams, and they get to prepare for them accordingly. Some comments for you. Very harsh on England this morning, lads. Did they really bottle it? They were playing a better team. They are a very young team. Possibly their goal came too soon. I would focus more on a couple of individuals. Kane looked off the pace, for example.
I think the bottling it is from the 1-0 up position. I think the missing of a couple of chances in the first half and the way they went into their shell in the second, and more so in extra time, is kind of what we're referring to, isn't it?
Harry Kane was injured, right? He had a calf injury.
Looks it, yeah.
Like, maybe that's just Harry Kane. He's like... I sometimes feel like Harry Kane feels like he's getting away with it a bit. That streak of goals was just a streak for a couple of seasons. Is he going to be the same striker in 4 years, do you think?
I think so, yeah. Like I think the streak was way too long to call it just a streak. I think...
I know, but it keeps feeling like every season that for the first 2 seasons you're like, I mean, that's amazing when Harry Kane's done that. Can he do it again 3 seasons in a row?
Yeah, like
Jamie Vardy can't keep going, right? And didn't keep going.
No. Like, yeah, it's a fair point. It's a fair point to make.
Keep going.
Maybe if you take Harry Kane and put him into Real Madrid, is he going to be as successful? Probably, because it's Real Madrid. But if you put him into a worse team or a different team, it feels like the Pochettino system is so perfect for him.
Yeah.
But then again, like, it's not like he's been playing that badly for England. Like, he had an off night last night. He was probably wasn't 100% fit, but nobody is 100% fit, I guess, coming to the semi-final.
Tournament now, so. Yeah. Okay, so next is Paul Cahoon. Hey, Paul. Thought they'd done well to get as far. Southgate deserves praise. Undoubtedly, Gareth Southgate deserves praise. He's getting lots of praise as well, so it's not like he's being undervalued. Anthony Hennessy says, Keano doing us proud on ITV. Relax yourself. Hashtag OTBAM. Good man, Anthony. For getting in touch this morning on @OffTheBall or @OffTheBallAM in particular for this show. Croatia may be underdogs on Sunday, but it does appear they know how to win games, and it does appear their name is on the trophy. Go on, you Croatian boyos, says Eamon Murray. Rory Ryan says Croatia were the better team for most of the second half and extra time. Like, as you made the point, when you're chasing the game, you always look like the better team because you're the one who has possession and the opposition's happy for you to have possession. So that's always post-fact rationalisation, I feel, in these circumstances.
Yeah, it is a caveat. Like, that does kind of dispel the idea that England scored too soon. They desperately needed a second goal. Like, I know a 2-goal lead is like
the most dangerous lead in football.
Well, yeah, I would say on last night's evidence, a 1-0 lead is far more perilous.
Yeah, I mean, obviously statistically it is too. Seamus Bannon says France versus Croatia has the potential to be an all-time classic match. Is it fair to say it's the best 2 teams in the world? Who is the momentum with, though? Is it the best 2 teams in the World Cup? I'm not sure. And also not France.
Is momentum a real thing? 88% there, Ger. saying it's real. 4% say they don't know, so it could be over 90%. Once those 4% figure out whether or not it's real.
88% of chumps. Seamus, I don't know if it's going to be a classic. I have my doubts. France could just make this a boring 0-0 at half time and win it 2-0.
Croatia would settle for a boring 0-0 at half time as well. They've got 2 penalty shootouts under their belt. We now know that the whole going to extra time multiple times hasn't really affected their fitness too much.
No, they're grand.
They're absolutely flying it. But the bottom line here is that Croke Park is going to get a much bigger attendance because, as the GA president said yesterday, would you really care if a team so closely associated with Ireland weren't playing in the final? And lo and behold, there was no team closely associated with Ireland playing in the final. So therefore, we lose interest in the biggest sporting event in the world.
Yeah. I mean, I probably will be flicking.
Like, you would have been flicking even if England were on it, or in it?
No, I'd record Kerry and Galway.
Fair enough.
And at half time, fast forward through, see the 3 goals that James has scored in that first half.
You know, maybe that'll happen.
Okay, so more Tommy Walsh goodness for you. This is slightly different. All week we've been teaming up with Domino's, the official food of everything, to give you the chance to win our end of week prize of $2,000 in cash. $2,000 in cash. Each day this week we're going to be picking a daily winner to go into the final draw on Sunday, and each of our finalists will win Domino's brand new Meat Fielder pizza. To be in to win, tune into tonight's show and let us know who their mystery voice is. We had Tommy Walsh on the show a few minutes back. You can watch his chat ahead of the weekend's hurling on youtube.com/offtheball. Tommy was also one of our OTB All-Stars who took on Kevin Kilbane in the Domino's Challenge. Have a look.
Hi, I'm Kevin Kilbane from Off The Ball. We've teamed up with Domino's, the official food of everything, to put some underdogs to the test. I'm joined here now by Tommy Walsh, Kilkenny hurler. You ready for the football challenge?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, come on, let's have a go. So 4 strikes at goal. You get 1 point for a goal. You get 3 points for hitting either of the 2 corners and 5 points for hitting either of the 2 top corners. I've got to beat Tommy. I have to beat Tommy. Save.
Oh, take him out, son. I mean that. Take him out.
Tommy,
okay, how are you?
Well done.
Thank
Has
you.
she been playing the right sport?
A good feeling anytime it hits the net.
2 all, happy with that?
Yeah, away from home. They're getting away goals though.
Oh, you're throwing away goals, is that what it is? No, I was very impressed. 1 or 2 decent strikes from you there anyway. Very good. Very
Thanks,
good.
Kev.
Good man. Good man. Well, join us next week for the Off The Ball Domino's Underdog Challenge.
It's Kevin Kilbane patronising Tommy. I mean, come on, Kev. Show us your medal there, Kev.
The home leg is going to be in Tullaroan with Hurley.
I thought that they were going to make Kev do the hurdle. That would have been good.
It would have been, yeah. Like, I wonder, was Tommy instructed to bring his Hurley, or did he like just happen to have it? He's like, sure, I'll give this a lash and just test it out before I actually kick the football. He's like, without like, of course, Kev is, saying you're very good at football, but Tommy Walsh can kick a ball.
He can, yeah. He's got shape. OTB AM live with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products every morning here for you at 7:45 across all of our social platforms, so make sure you check them out. You've got Harry Redknapp coming up in just a minute, Owen. Harry's an interesting character.
He is, yeah. Very interesting character. Plenty.
He's friendly.
Very friendly, yeah. Very nice guy. Very nice chap. He was in town yesterday, so he hung around to watch the England match, and I think probably legging it back to the UK at some point this morning. So,
or France,
yeah. Wherever he maybe he's heading over to Moscow. Who knows?
AIB, proud sponsor of both club and county, did bring Harry Redknapp to Dublin yesterday afternoon to launch their new series, The Toughest Rivalry. This is going to be great. This series stars Redknapp and Gianluca Vialli, the Chelsea, Juventus and Italian legend, as AIB expose both Premier League powerhouses to life in the GAA as they take charge of two rival clubs. So Vialli was with Erin's Isle in Dublin and Redknapp was with Castlehaven in West Cork, because those two teams were in the 1998 All-Ireland Club semi-final. Castlehaven were beaten by a last-minute goal, a questionable goal by all accounts. They're still talking about it in Castlehaven. The controversial ending apparently left both teams with unfinished business, which now both Vialli and Redknapp are going to have the opportunity to fix. So this series is going to culminate in an epic rematch set to take place at the end of the summer, with both Vialli and Redknapp managing their teams and using their managerial expertise to improve and make a difference to their teams. The first episode of The Toughest Rivalry airs on Friday the 13th of July. Eoin sat down with Harry yesterday before England's World Cup semi-final. Enjoy.
All right, Harry, welcome to Ireland. Welcome to Gaelic Games, I guess, is the most appropriate introduction I can give. How did you find it down in Castlehaven? How have you found it so far?
Yeah, I loved it. It was a fantastic experience for me. I mean, I went there with very little idea about what the game was about, to be honest with you. And that's, in the short time I was there, I fell in love with it. I thought it was an amazing game, and I can see why it's got such a big following. It's got everything, it's got plenty of skill. It's got aggression. It's a tough game, and it's such an exciting game. It took me a while I couldn't understand at first why people didn't try to score more and beat the goalkeeper. I'm thinking, well, it's 3 points. Why? But then, obviously, as I went on, you understood that at certain times of a game you've got to go for the 3 points, and other times you've got to take the point when it's there. And so, yeah, the whole thing I thought was excellent. Really enjoyed it.
Was there any transferable skills from a coaching point of view that you thought straight away, I've got the hang of this?
Well, there was, yeah. I mean, the technique in the game, the way they volley the ball, they're kicking. You've got to be a great kicker of the ball. Obviously, they kicking the ball 30, 40 yards into someone's hands is a great skill in itself. And, when they're shooting at goal, the volleying technique and the way they hit the ball, there's lots of comparisons with soccer, really.
And essentially, it is sport. It is kind of a centrepiece of a community, which I'm sure we kind of like to preach about quite a bit when it comes to Gaelic Games. But it's the same with football back in England. It is the centrepiece of many a community that you've been involved in.
It is, but it's different. That your lads here, they're from the community. They're part of that community. They got a feeling for that team. That is where they are. That is their lifeblood of the community. I think our game's different now. We've got people that come from everywhere. They come and play and go, and they'll spend 18 months, 2 years there, kiss the badge, and then they're off to go and play somewhere else. Whereas there's the Gaelic football and the community thing there I found in Castlehaven was completely different. They're there, and it's there. When they're playing a game, it's like it's their territory. Someone's coming trying to beat them on their territory, and everybody's involved in the club. Everybody, the man who runs the shop, I went in there to buy a paper, and he's part of the lady in the pub. She runs the girls' side of the ladies' side of the Gaelic football. Everybody there seemed to be part of that was the lifeblood of the community.
Yeah, there's a certain purity to it, I guess, and one of the big debates we're having at the moment is when it comes to inter-county Gaelic football and hurling, the elitism that's creeping into the game, that potentially one day Gaelic football and hurling could turn professional, and I guess for reasons that you've outlined there, but very different ones. You wouldn't have the international level. The purity of the game could go out of it, and I guess from what you've seen, it would be a shame to lose that purity, to lose that sense of community.
Yeah, that would be a shame, but I suppose the only thing is you're still going to have, I don't see, probably better, would know better than me, but you're still only going to have the Irish boys playing it, or the Irish girls or whatever playing the games. You're not going to suddenly have people coming from all over the world playing the game. You're not going to have transfers from Italy or somewhere. They wouldn't know what Gaelic football was, would they? Yeah. So it's still going to have that. I'm sure it still have the same feel to it here. It would be different. Whereas, it was like that when I started in soccer. When I left school and went to West Ham, everybody at West Ham, every player came from within a 5 or 6 mile radius of the football ground. We didn't buy players. Everyone came from the youth team. That was our team. We all joined the club at 15, 14, 15, left school and played, and that was how it was. And then suddenly it's all opened up. Obviously, you've got players from all over the world. they come and go. I don't think you'll ever recapture the field it had years ago when everybody was homegrown, and that was their team. And I think Gaelic football's the same.
There's one of your coaching attributes I wanted to chat to you about, and it's man management. And a couple of those Castlehaven players are involved with the Cork team at the moment who are doing quite poorly. They're underachieving. I don't think they'll disagree with that themselves, because they've got a very talented bunch of people. They won the All-Ireland only 8 years ago, and they're way down in the doldrums at the moment. And just thinking about chatting to you today, it's not a whole pile different from how Spurs were when you arrived, and down near the bottom of the table, you didn't have a transfer market immediately. So you changed the dressing room, you got inside the heads of the players, and it was a good display of man management. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, about how you can completely lift the dressing room just for what you say, rather than bringing in and spending £20 million on a striker?
I think when you walk into a dressing room, you've got to give the place a lift, haven't you? You've got to tell people, you've got to get into the heads of every individual and tell them that they are good players. If I walk in and says, "Oh, you're rubbish," you're not good enough, or you've got to go in and make them believe. And it's all about confidence. I mean, everything in life is about confidence, isn't it? If you're confident doing whatever job you do, you've got a chance of doing it well. If you're not confident and you're worried about it, and it's like stand up speaking in public or whatever. Unless you're confident, you're going to struggle. And football's no different. I think you'll get far more out of people. Then I went there with Gareth Bale, and I said, Gareth, you'll murder this team today. They're scared stiff of you. They're right backs in their dressing room. And can you imagine what? He's probably shaking in his boots in there, waiting to play against you today. Go out and murder him, run him ragged. And I think you'll get more out of people by telling them what they can do and what they can't do, and that's always been my philosophy.
Has that gone out of the game a little bit, in your opinion, that there's more of a focus on the tangible things in football, like data and statistics, rather than the actual man-to-man conversations you can have, which can make huge improvements?
Yeah, I think, but you can have all the stats in the world, but it comes down really at the end of the day. It's like we were talking about corners the other. England's dead set plays are great. Harry Maguire, sorry, yeah. Harry Maguire, I nearly said Harry McNally. He was a manager of Wigan years ago. Harry Maguire, he made an average ball into a great ball. There was nothing magic about the ball that was in there. It was put in by their defenders is getting ready. He's come across him from nowhere, and his determination to head the ball, and he's got on the end of it and powered it in the back of the net. It's and that's what the game's never changed. You can look at all the stats in the world, everything you want to look at. But it's about how people actually perform when they get on the pitch. And, you give them all the information, but it's doing it out there under pressure when you've got to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess on that point as well, when you look at some of the appointments that have been made in the Premier League over the last year, one thing that really strikes me is the reaction to, say, Roy Hodgson when he was appointed as Crystal Palace manager, that there was newspapers running stories like, this guy could be the great-great-great-grandfather of Wilfred Zaha, and there seemed to be a certain ageist nature about the way they were talking about Roy Hodgson, that I do wonder sometimes that unless you're kind of young and trendy and have statistics on your side, how do you get back into the Premier League these days without a massive reputation?
But how do any British manager get into the Premier League nowadays? The only way you get into the Premier League if you're a British manager is to get promoted.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's very difficult. Every club now, when they make an appointment, they go foreign. Even outside the top six, they're all foreign. Outside the top six, Everton, whoever, they're all bringing in foreign managers. The only way you'll get up there is if you can take the team. Who would have ever heard of Eddie Howe at Bournemouth? He would never have. He'd have just wasted away down there if he hadn't got promoted with Bournemouth. And suddenly he's in the Premier League. Now everybody knows him, and they talk of him being a future England manager. But if he hadn't have got a team Bournemouth promoted, he'd have just wasted away in the Division 1 or whatever. Sean Dyche the same at Burnley. He'd have never got a chance to manage in the Premier League, Sean. He had to bring Burnley up. Tony Pulis he was here then everywhere. Tony Pulis, he was at Bournemouth, Gillingham, Bristol Rovers, Bristol City. He managed everywhere. And eventually gets promoted with Stoke and then establishes himself as an outstanding Premier League manager for 10 years. But no one would ever give him a job. The only way you get a Premier League club, the only way you get them chances now, it seems, unless you're very lucky, is to get promoted with a club.
Oh, why is that?
Because I don't know, they seem to think it's sexier to give a job to a foreign manager, whatever reason, I don't know. It don't make sense to me, but there's some great managers in the lower divisions in this country. Lads who do the coaching, they work hard every week. You know, they're out there on the training pitches, they know the game, they travel the country watching games, but when it comes to getting a decent job, they never get the chance.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of the point I was trying to make with Roy Hodgson as well, that potentially that was some of the coverage around him was negative for that reason.
Yeah, well, probably because he'd had such a bad World Cup that, you know, everyone was against him, but he got the job, and look what a great job he did.
From getting back on the pitch with Castlehaven and all that over the last couple of weeks, what's next for you after you're finished with your stint in Cork? Is club management back on the horizon?
No, listen, if something came along that was interesting, I probably wouldn't say no. I'm a sucker for punishment. But I don't know whether that will happen. You know, I wouldn't sit here holding me, you know, thinking, oh, I've got to get another job. If I don't, I don't. If I do, I'm busy every day. Every day I'm doing something. You know, I'm always somewhere doing something. And so, you know...
what takes up most of your time these days?
I've got lots of stuff outside of football. I've got a development company, you know, I build lots of houses and flats down where I live. I've got a racing stables that I own. That keeps me busy. Going there, I'd go and watch the horses on the gallops in the morning. Just bought a nice horse in Ireland a few weeks ago, from Ireland.
What's the horse's name? Are you allowed to reveal it?
No, I've not named it yet, actually. I bought it from a man in Northern Ireland. Yeah, hopefully he breeds good horses. And he's out of Flemingsfirth, the horse, well-bred horse. Paid a lot of money for it, and I hope he's never even run a point to point. So it's a national hunt horse, and hoping we're going to have a Cheltenham horse on our hands in the future.
Are you a Cheltenham goer every year?
Not every year now, no. I used to go. I used to love to go, but it gets too busy for me now. I find it very busy. But I've been lucky in the past. I've sort of gone into a box there with all the proper people, with JP and all the, you know, and all the Irish boys and John Magdia and all the lads who'll go, you know, JP McManus, Michael Tabor, Derek Smith. They normally used to invite me, and I used to love going there. But it gets very busy in this, yeah.
Good stuff. Well, you'll have to let us know the name of the horse eventually.
I will eventually, yeah. It'd probably be. I've bought a few dud horses over the years, and it could be another one. But I hope Mr. Dennison hasn't sold me a dud.
Hopefully. Just one last question then before I let you go. Just given the week that's in it, given not just what's dominating the back pages.
Oops, sorry. John, can I ring you back in 10 minutes? John, I'll come back to you. Cheers, John.
Just one last one. The last time I was watching you on television was only a couple of weeks ago. I think it was one of the more unusual television experiences I've ever had. It was the moment with Danny Dyer on with Piers Morgan. You were in studio that day as well. And in my opinion, that was an interesting moment for the UK as a whole when they looked at that and they saw what Danny Dyer had to say about Brexit. And they were like, hold on a minute, here's somebody who's not sitting in Parliament, who I actually have an interest in listening to about what's going on in my country. And it feels that could be the first step towards a more vocal sporting cohort around Brexit in the United Kingdom, much like they have in the United States, where athletes are outspoken about these sort of things. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm reading too much into this, maybe there isn't kind of a future for this, maybe footballers aren't interested in this sort of stuff.
No, I don't think many of them are interested in that sort of stuff. I think their main interest is how much is in their contract. Mm-hmm. I think you'll find most footballers, you know, if it affects what they're going to earn every week, they'd be very interested. If suddenly they went, oh, tax is going to go up to 90% again or whatever, they'd be, you know, because I think that's when you find they take an interest in it. But other than that, I think I'm not saying all footballers, but I think in the main, like most sportsmen, I think unless it affects them personally, I don't think they're in their own little bubble at the moment. They're earning so much money.
What's your own view on what's happening over in the UK at the moment?
I don't know how it's all going to go. Really, I've got really strong views, but I wouldn't want to air them in public. To be fair with you, I've got my own views about lots of things that happen in politics.